All right. So, as part of our house style, I think we should really make our best effort. Can't promise never to slip, but not to reinforce the narrative that's being pushed out of Israeli hostages versus Palestinian prisoners. We are going to refer to them as Palestinian hostages because that is clearly what they are. Israeli occupation have barred families of Palestinian captives from celebrating or speaking to press after their loved ones are released. They have also dropped leaflets on the homes of prisoners' families that read, quote, "The Israeli security forces will not allow demonstrations in support of terrorist organizations. Anyone who takes part in such activities exposes themselves to questioning, punishment, and arrest. You have been warned. We are watching you closely." Now, a lot of people have pointed out that everyone roots for the rebellion in a movie. How much more cartoonishly could the Israelis be the evil empire in a movie than they are? You have been warned. We are watching you closely. Everything about them screams, we are the bad guys. We are the baddies. So I've been meaning to use some of this kid's stuff for a while. I'm glad I finally got the opportunity. He I think is a Russian emigre to Israel, but he's an Israeli citizen, so he's able to get in places without winding up in a dungeon that a non-Israeli could not, and he definitely uses that privilege to expose what's going on there. He's done some very good stuff. He was part of actually a march that was trying to do a land version of the flotilla at the same time they were sailing in. They were and they actually did cross the fence, and of course, the security forces took them down. So this is Andrei Karzanovsky. So give him a follow. And here he is showing what's going on the ground to suppress any kind of celebration.
The location where the Palestinian hostages will be released, but the whole town is blocked by the army. They told us several times not to come because they don't want any coverage of the event. Why?
Ебать, господи. Пиздец, сука. What the fuck? How many fucking army cars do you need?
We just got up to the hill, and the inside, like all the air, is just tear gas. It's very difficult to breathe. The Israeli army drove through the town adjacent to the concentration camp and shot gas grenades randomly, setting fire to this tree, which might actually transfer to the building. Today, Palestinian and Israeli hostages are being exchanged. 90 Palestinian hostages have just been released here in Ramallah. Israeli hostages have been released near Gaza, and many other Palestinians have been deported out of the country. The Israeli army banned Palestinians from celebrating the release of the hostages and raided the town that is nearby to the Ofer concentration camp from where they were released. The vast majority of Palestinians who are held at Israeli concentration camps are civilian non-combatants. Many of them are held without charges. Many of them are women and children. They're held in completely inhumane conditions that have been described as torture by human rights advocacy organizations. Israel has a long-standing tradition of kidnapping Palestinian civilians to use them as bargaining chips, essentially as hostages, and only a fraction of them have been released today. Israel will do its best now to present the situation as if it's done, that the ceasefire ends it, but it is far from over. There are thousands of Palestinians in Israeli concentration camp, and the Israeli apartheid is stronger than ever before.
I mean, it's clear that these people just hate Jews. They just hate Jews. It's obvious.
Right.
So this is a little bit, in spite of their best efforts, you're not going to make people not express joy when relatives who they haven't seen in 20 years are released from a dungeon. So here's a little bit of that. Here's more from The Guardian. The police could not hold the crowds back. As soon as they saw the Palestinian prisoners and detainees through the windows of the bus, hundreds of people gathering in front of a theater in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank rushed forward, chanting the names of loved ones they had not seen for years or in some cases decades. In total, 88 Palestinians were released from Israeli prisons and sent to the occupied West Bank on Monday. The other nearly 2,000, a number that includes about 1,700 Palestinians seized from Gaza during the war and held without charge. You know what that sounds like? It's not a prisoner. That's a hostage. That's a hostage. No charges. Just snatched. Were sent back to Gaza, where a minority would travel on to neighboring countries. The prisoners and detainees were released by Israel a few hours after all living Israeli hostages were returned from Gaza. Before Monday's release, 11,056 Palestinians were held in Israeli prisons, according to statistics from the Israeli NGO Ha-Moked in October 2025. At least 3,500 of those were held in administrative detention without trial. An Israeli military database has indicated that only a quarter of those detained in Gaza were classified as fighters. I don't think they mention it here, but don't forget, it's estimated about 1,600 of their prisoners are children, are fucking children. When asked about their treatment in the prisons, a prisoner apologized and said he could not answer for fear that he would face repercussions from Israeli authorities, only saying that it was horrible. Another said that the conditions were very, very, very difficult and that the last 2 years in prison were the worst 2 years of his life, asking that he not be named. There's those Western values we keep hearing about. Only democracy in the Middle East. Palestinians have faced abuse and inhumane treatment in Israeli prisons as a matter of policy, according to the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem. The group alleges that Palestinian detainees are denied medical treatment, adequate food, and face physical abuse in Israeli prisons. Activists have long said that wide-scale imprisonment of Palestinians is used as a tool to enforce Israel's occupation of the Palestinian territories, with statistics estimating that up to 40% of Palestinians have been arrested at some point. Israel says its prison system complies with international law. Yes, I'm sure it does. Israel also forbade people from celebrating the release on Monday, firing tear gas at family members and journalists waiting near Ofer prison in the occupied West Bank where detainees were kept. 6 different relatives of prisoners all said they had been visited by Israeli security services in recent days. Quote, they came to warn us not to hold celebrations, not to raise flags or banners, not to gather in the diwan, which means hall. These days, the hardest thing is to speak the truth, said a relative of the prisoner Hani al-Zir, who asked not to be identified by name out of fear of security repercussions. Zir had been imprisoned for 23 years, and the relative, as well as Zir's son, had also been imprisoned several times. Others evidently had been told their loved ones were to be returned home, only to find out at the last minute that they were being deported. Quote, why are they deporting him? A woman screamed in tears as police officers rushed her away from the crowd. Quote, it would have been easier if they just told us from the beginning. We don't know where he is. Egypt, Gaza, we are devastated, said Raed Imran as he led Abed to the car where she had been preparing to receive her brother. So just absolutely demonic what they put these people through. This is from Dropsite, which has been doing a lot of very good coverage about this. In prison, Israeli guards told him again and again that Israeli soldiers had killed his entire family, a form of psychological torture, he said, meant to break him. But when he walked up the stairs of his Gaza home today, his wife rushed into his arms. his children and parents beside her, alive, waiting, and all of them delirious with relief and joy. And there is some very touching video of that. But that's Nazi shit. Your family is dead. They are all dead. What are you holding on for?
How long was he away for? Again?
Did it say? Couldn't have been that long if his kids are that age.
حبيبي يا بابا حبيبي 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 انا ما اتوجع كنت اسعد باسمك خير يا بابا
And this is talking about what the situation in there is like.
موتوا يوم احنا كلنا في اليوم
Turn it down.
اذا انتم بتموتوا يوم
If you all die once in a day, we all died 1,000 times each day. We did not know the day, the time, or the date. We didn't know the taste of sleep or the taste of food. He would come in the middle of the night and throw water on us in the cells. He would come to torture us with all kinds of torture. Shadi, forget the prison. You got out, and your children are next to you. Relax a bit. I want nothing else than for them to release all of the hostages. 1,800 were freed. There are over 2,000 remaining. All of them need to be freed so they no longer suffer. So just impossible to even imagine what these people have been through and what they're experiencing. Now you think you'll hear from a lot of these Zionist sickos, oh, it's Pallywood. It's Pallywood. They should all get an Oscar. They should all get an Academy Award. So this is Tig Hickey, whose account of his experience after the flotilla members were captured in this last attempt to break the siege. The stories are coming out now, man. They're talking about how they were treated. And he makes the point, if they'll treat us this way, what do you think they do to Palestinians?
In baking sun, cable ties behind her back. If you lift your head to offer any solidarity to the comrade ahead who's getting physically and mentally abused, your head is slapped back down on the ground. And I'm just sitting there going, I've tried to bring baby formula to Gaza. How could you be treating an Irish citizen like this? Like, we end up a couple of days later in a prison cell with one of our delegates. He's a 75-year-old man, the most gentle man you'd ever meet in your life, Paddy Kelly, just simply asking for his insulin. They won't give him his insulin. We're concerned that he's going to die. And so there's a borderline riot in our wing of the prison. Eventually, instead of a doctor coming along, they just bring in a SWAT team to try and restrain the protests. And I quote, the guard said, "We don't have any doctors for animals." So that's how they view us. Like, they view us as animals. That was a comment. They call us terrorist animals. They spat in Diago. He's one of the leaders of the movement. They spat in his face. And like, I just kept thinking to myself, well, two things. One, if they're doing this to people like me with the passport I have, imagine what they're doing to Palestinians when there's no repercussions for it at all and there's no diplomatic pressure on them to stop doing it at all. And secondly, how on earth does the world, again, allow this country to operate like this? Like, imagine if the Iranian regime or the Russian regime treated a 75-year-old Irish man like that. There would be widespread outrage, and rightly so. But somehow this Israeli exceptionalism, even 2 years into a genocide, still persists.
Yep. And this is not hostage taking. There's Yanis Varoufakis. If this is not hostage taking, what is? Israel refuses to release Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, who insisted on staying with his patients in his bombed hospital, even after his own son was murdered. Since then, he has been held in one of Israel's torture facilities. So if this is not hostage taking, it's not hostage taking, what possible rationale could you have to keep a doctor in jail who hasn't even been accused of a crime? That is the very definition of hostage taking.
Oh, no
And
doubt. And actually, just to briefly interject, I mean, it's a morbid thought and a horrible thought, but I'm actually very surprised that he has not been killed, this guy. Because I remember when this guy was abducted, it
right,
was a long time ago, and he
right,
disappeared. Nobody knew anything about him.
right. And we're supposed to, I've seen some of the libs I know because they're in a very tough spot with this, particularly in the arts. They're dying to just say, and now the healing can begin. Shut the fuck up, mother. Now the healing can begin. We're supposed to.
The healing can begin.
I swear to God. I swear to God, like that's a real thing that I saw. Now the healing. Can begin. Yeah, no, it's complicated. They're dying to go back to that. It's complicated. Get the fuck out of here, man. Israel is no
I can
less.
finally say something that means nothing. Thank God.
That's it.
Thank God.
That's it. That's it. I can because they didn't know how to virtue signal with this, because anything they said that would be honest, might cost them a role in the fucking Music Man and Sheboygan or some shit. So they didn't want to say anything about it, and now they go, oh, let the healing start. That works. That works. That's good.
Who could be against you? Who has a problem with healing?
Who has a problem with healing? Asel Rod here says 1,700 of the Palestinians being released have been held without charge, including women and children as bargaining chips. That's the definition of a hostage, but they're still called prisoners. The difference in language is intentional to erase Palestinian victimization. And this was a quote tweet over the New York Times' tweet. Breaking news. Israel said the Red Cross had custody of some of the hostages in Gaza who were to be released in exchange for Palestinian what? Prisoners. The Palestinians
Right.
are prisoners. The Israelis are hostages. You know what? You could much more make the argument with the Israelis that they're prisoners, given the universal conscription in the country for both sexes. If you have an adult in custody from Israel, they have probably served in the IDF. They are either serving or have served in the IDF. You cannot make that argument with women and children that you're snatching out of Palestinian territory. They don't have women serving in the fighting brigades of Hamas, and certainly, obviously, not children. Just absolutely disgusting. And you could see the way that the media and liberals are dying to go back to that kind of shit, to go back to both sidesing it, and it's complicated, and now we can all heal, and they're gonna show you their cute little fucking pictures of a Palestinian and an Israeli child together, right? And just that's all well and good, but that is not the reality on the ground, and that is not both sides. That is not the fault of both sides. It is clearly the fault of one side. And this is why I had actually in person at a show, somebody come up to me and ask about our take on Ukraine and that kind of thing. You know what, man? Whatever your take on that is, I don't want to hear shit about what the Russians are doing in Ukraine if you're propping up Israel. I don't want to hear a fucking word about it. If you're supporting this fucking genocidal apartheid state, I don't want to hear what you have to say about that at all.
Yeah, and look, I mean, when you talk about the prisoner hostage label, I mean, look, it's the most obvious thing in the world. A political prisoner is a hostage. So if someone is being imprisoned for political reasons, then that is a hostage.
It's
right?
worse than that.
So
They didn't even do anything.
Well, this is what I mean. I mean, you're taking them purely for political reasons, right? They are purely
but it's not even
jail.
like you arrested them for handing out propaganda or something.
No,
which would be bad, but
right.
No reason.
Right. A doctor, a child, people in there without even knowing what they are being accused of. Yeah, obviously, those are hostages. Yeah, it is kind of this strange moment. I mean, this is why there's been a lot of just like silence on the pro-Palestine side. It's not silence of apathy, it's silence of precarity, if you will. You know, it's a silence of uncertainty, of not knowing if this is going to hold. I mean, obviously, you see the guy reunited with his family there. You see these Palestinian hostages released. We're obviously grateful for, any kind of peace, any kind of break in all of this violence. But it's just very uncertain how long it'll last. And I would say it's less than uncertain. It is certain that the subjugation of the Palestinians will continue. That was really never in question. That's why, I mean, it is just beyond absurd. We're going to do a full segment on this in a bit about how a lot of these chud accounts who paid no attention to this, because as much as they are pro-Trump, they know that the real core of MAGA is not exactly pro-Israel. So they were kind of silent on this all along. But now the line is that Trump freed Palestine because he got a ceasefire. Who knows how long it'll last, right? But it's still a very tense situation. And, you can't help but be happy for people when they are reunited with their families, but you also can't help but fear for them, because there is this real, foreboding sense that this is far from over.
Not only that, they've been released into a vicious, racist apartheid police state.
Yeah, of course.
Look what we're watching you. Do not smile when you see a relative you haven't seen in 20 years. Right. No celebrating.
Of course.
Please clap.